Hello and welcome to today's show with Dr. Janette. In this program, Dr. Janette shares with the audience ways to develop their inner skills for outer results. With its meditation, visualization, affirmations, and more, you'll learn something today to help you live happier, healthier, and more satisfying lives by working your inner game now. Welcome, Dr. Janette.
Hello, I'm Dr. Janette, and so thank you so much for joining me today on our first show of Inner Skills for Outer Results. And my goal is to be able to have some conversations with people about how we can influence and affect a change in our outer life by working on our inner life. So that's becoming more aware of what's happening inside, a change of thought, working on our mind-body connection. And so, first of all, I have a question for you. Can you quiet your mind at will? Can you change your stream of thought? One of the things that causes the most amount of suffering for people is the fact that their mind is going all the time. Have you ever had a situation where maybe at work somebody says something to you, or your primary relationship says something, they have that look in their eyes, and you find yourself getting all upset, and before you know it, you have tripped out, you can't get it out of your mind, you're suffering over and over again, you try to think about something else, but it's not working, and there's skills and there's information and awareness that we can develop in order to be more conscious and more skillful users of our mind. And one of the things that I teach is an understanding of what's happening in the brain, what's happening physiologically, so that we can begin to have some self-awareness about what's happening. And what is interesting is we are programmed, our brain is programmed to respond to threats. And just like the cavemen that, a tiger jumped out, they had a threat, our bodies are wired to produce all kinds of adrenaline and hormones and all kinds of stress responses in order to get away from that tiger. And so we are living out that same program over and over and over again. And when we can become more skilled at understanding what's happening internally, we can now begin to be able to have greater experiences of peace and be able to create more productive lives. Now, how many of you would like more productive lives? I know I do. So just a little bit of background about me as we're moving forward. I was a young single mom suffering and struggling and had a lot of emotional problems and just dealing with the stress of a young family. And one day I walked into a bookstore that would prove to change my life. And in that bookstore, I saw all kinds of books on positive thinking, on meditation, on personal development. And that began about a 10-year intensive study in that type of a teaching, and the mind and consciousness and spirituality. And I was able to affect a lot of change in my life, and greater success and love and relationships and in my family, and be able to finally move out to have a full-time career in teaching these principles to other people. And it has been my life's work really to help people understand that if they'd like a change in their outer life, then let's work on the inner life, because until we deal with that, we're not going to be able to have the long-lasting effects in our life that we want. I wrote about that in my first book, Why Did This Happen to Me Again? And these are principles that are out there, they're available, and people are having a lot of success and results in their life when embarking upon these principles to begin to shift their life. Now, I hope in this show to be able to give you some actual tools that you can practice that can begin to shift things for you, and to be able to have something that you can work in your life. So would that be all right with you? All right, very good. Well, I want to, first of all, start off with introducing a guest that I just met, and I'm very excited to have her on with me today, that we can have a conversation about this same thing. Like, she so inspired me because she was having rough time, and she began that journey of consciously working on her body, working on her mind, working on her emotions. And she'll talk about her own journey, but through that, she's been able to now be a part of other people's lives and helping them to do that. And what I hope to do is be able to show how so many people are doing this, and that they are making shifts and changes, whether it's learning how to be conscious about what you're thinking about, whether it's really learning how to meditate and being able to learn how to quiet the mind, and whether it's about learning how to activate greater happiness in our lives through activating emotions that bring happiness into our lives. So many things that we can do. So first of all, I'd like to go ahead and we're going to take a quick little break as we get ready to introduce our guest to you. So I'll be right back. All right, so glad to be back and so excited to introduce our guest to you today. 2 years ago, our guest, Angeline Corona, found herself at a crossroads, and she was quickly robbed of her health and stricken with anxiety and depression to the point where she really didn't even recognize herself in the mirror. And at that point, she really reached her lowest point in her life, and when she physically and mentally had nothing more to give, something inside of her shifted, and she began a fight for her life. And she experienced a transformation through the natural healing of her body, her mind, and her soul. She lost 81 pounds and experienced an emotional healing that lifted the weight off the world, and I would say off her, evidently, too. She shares how she successfully integrated a healthy lifestyle that continues to be her way of life. And through a commitment to self-love and care, she discovered who she is and is dedicated to sharing her story of hope. And she also is the founder of a center in Fresno, which is called Hope Through Empowerment Wellness Training Center. I'm excited to find that place because I'm going to use it as my main training center in town when I'm here in town teaching. And so welcome, Angeline, or should we call you Angel?
You can call me Angel.
I think you are an angel.
Oh, thank you.
I think you definitely are an angel, and everyone is lucky to be able to hear your story today. And so why don't you just go ahead and share from your own words a little bit about your story, and then a little bit about, what triggered you and what path and what steps that you took in order to bring you to today.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So 3 years ago, actually, this month, this is June, and so 3 years ago is when I had basically a complete breakdown, really, is what I did. I had a physical, spiritual, emotional breakdown. Obviously, I was heavy at 211 pounds, but more importantly, I was extremely sick. I had the onset of 2 autoimmune diseases. I was just absolutely depressed to the point of I really didn't see, other than my family, a reason to be here. It was just, you talked about suffering. I was suffering like I couldn't believe it. And so, and I had been experiencing that since I was very young. I would say like 10 years old. Never understood what was wrong. I didn't have a weight issue when I was younger, but I had depression. And so not understanding what that was and not having a clue about mind, body, and soul wellness at all. Really trying to always figure out how can I get happy. I tried diets, I tried all these different things, but I failed every time because it was always something that was like, I had to deprive myself, or I had to, just completely go off the deep end, at a temporary solution. But what I never knew was that it was really about what I was thinking and my mind and how that mentality of always waiting for the other shoe to drop, thinking that nothing was always working out for me, really creating that in my life. And so the weight was just a side effect, because that was basically what I did to cope, to numb. And so when I had my breakdown, and all the doctors, medical doctors, were telling me that everything was fine and I was fine, my naturopath doctors were telling me that you need to, start gluten, dairy, sugar-free until we can figure out what's wrong, because no test would really identify clearly what those symptoms were, right?
Right.
And so during that, feeling really frustrated, feeling really lost, not sure what I was going to do. And it wasn't until I started doing the gluten, dairy, sugar-free, really eating clean, basically, not sticking to any one label, but customizing that for myself, because I have 4 kids and a full-time job. And at that time I was working 8 to 5. And so I had to do this on top of being a mom and a wife and all of that. And so really trying to figure out how I was going to do that. As I started to change the way I ate and really put in real food, that's when the light bulb went off, and I started to feel the tremendous amount of pain that I was in. And that's when everything just really came to a screeching halt, because it was like, okay, I was eating right and I was starting to feel better. But then once I started feeling, I realized, and I had been on antidepressants after I had my kids, and I had gone through all of that, and nothing ever worked for me. So now that I was feeling, it was so overwhelming. But I knew that that was the root of it all for me. That was the root of my depression, my health issues, the eating, everything, the anxiety. And so as I began to really learn how to identify that in my life, I started to see the dysfunction in the way I was thinking. I started to see the dysfunction of, and it's not the way I was raised, because I had great parents. They raised me with great morals and values. But it was that scarcity mentality. It was that fear-driven mentality that you have to struggle to have enough. It was, and that way of thinking went into every area of my life. And so I created a life of struggle and scarcity.
Isn't that fun?
Oh my
That's
gosh.
so fun.
It almost killed me. Dang near killed me. Yeah.
That's not how the universe is in reality, right?
Yeah.
When we look at the universe and we look at Yosemite, right? When we look at nature, it's not constricted or restricted or contracted. It's ever growing, ever evolving, ever growing, changing. Things die, things grow, things die, things grow. And I think as human beings, because we have a troubled mind, right? It stops our growth. We're so worried about keeping ourselves safe and making sure there's enough and holding tight to everything, when I think more that we get back to our natural self, and we get back to that peace that's within us, we connect to something true. And something true is that it's not limited and a struggle, and it's not that world, that fear-based world. So how can we start to shift that and let go of that perception that says this is a fear, this world is to be scared, and I got to hold on with dear life and grab what's mine.
And that's really where I healed.
Yeah.
And that awareness is where I really began to heal, because it was my whole life I spent trying to control everything and everyone, because of that deep-rooted fear.
Right.
And I felt like that was the way I coped, the way I was safe, and I protected myself, when really that was such a lie, because it was just making me sick and tired, and my body was so, I felt like I would be 80 years old. I'm 41 now, was 38 when that happened. But and nobody really seems to know that. Nobody really seemed to. I've talked to a lot of people in my years of trying to be well, and nobody tells you that. That it's the way you think, and always seeing that there's never enough. Right. You're not enough. You don't have enough. You don't. You don't do enough. And that not enoughness, like you said, really is what makes people so sick, because it's always thinking they have to work so hard, when really, if we just stop and just allow things to come to us, it's just abundant. It is.
It's such a predominant belief, isn't it, that the kind of this world or the human mindset that causes so much suffering in so many areas of our life is that idea that there's not enough, or we have to get it, or we have to protect ours. There's not enough love, somebody could take our love away from us, somebody could do something. And so this constant trying to hold on, when what if we were to discover that what we were really seeking wasn't outside of ourselves at all?
Exactly. And that's the key. I had no connection to self. Absolutely. In fact, I used to hate to be alone because I had to have noise, or I had to be with someone. It was so uncomfortable for me to be alone. And I realized later that it was because when I was alone, I started to feel. And I didn't want to feel because I didn't feel good. And so that whole, 38 years of my life suffering because of that simple. Now I love to be alone. I replenish when I'm alone. And now it's like that connection to not only who I am, but that self-love that came with that connection. That self-love for me, and really loving who I am. Because I spent my whole life hating who I was, feeling like something was wrong. That's where I felt like the answers lied, is in learning who I was and loving and accepting every part of me.
Right.
Yeah.
So you brought up something that's really important, and I'd just like to throw it out there to anybody that's listening, is how comfortable are you at being alone? Now, I mean, like, not even with the television, right? Not with the television, with just being with yourself. And so a lot of times people have to fill their time with noise and television or people. I don't have anything to do. What am I going to do? Or we create a life where we're constantly busy and we don't even know what it is to have time to be alone. But what happens for a lot of people is maybe they get sick, or they have some, and they have to face their aloneness.
Yes.
But this first question really, how comfortable am I with being alone? And that, I believe, leads back to what happens when we're in a quiet environment. Okay, so what happens if you just take somebody and put them in a room, or they're in their living room or wherever, to just sit there? Like, what do they do? Like, get on the phone, you have to fill their mind with something, turn on the TV, get on the phone. That's the thing now. Get on the computer, do something.
Because I think they get so, like, I used to get so uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable. It was like in my own skin. It was just this anxious, like, number one, I felt like I wasn't doing anything, so I was like, I was worthless because I wasn't, and that was a very limited belief that was embedded deep in there. But yeah, it was this uncomfortable, just like, and you know what it was? It was because I was alone with myself, and I had so much self-hatred and no love for myself that it was almost like I couldn't stand it. It's like if you're around someone that you can't stand and you just want to leave. That's the feeling I had.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was so sad. It was sad,
So what happened that started to turn that for you, to be able to help you move from that place? What are some things that you did, or awarenesses that you had? Sometimes we just have a new awareness about something.
Yes.
That started to create that transformation.
So one of the most significant things for me was Louise Hay has, I listened to YouTube, like I went on YouTube, like that was my school, right?
Right.
Because I couldn't find people here in town. Yeah.
Right.
So I was listening to her videos, and she had one about a mirror exercise. And you look in the mirror and you tell yourself, I love you, right? It seems simple. Well, it was so not simple. In fact, it took me like a week before I could literally lock eyes with myself. And when I committed to it and I stood there, because you feel silly at first, right?
Sure.
Because in our minds, we think this programming. So when I finally locked eyes, I instantly could not stop crying. It was like this. The only way I can explain it was the person I am now saw the broken little girl I left behind
Right,
years
that's
ago
right,
and
that's
have
right.
neglected.
That's right.
And there's this huge gap in between. And when I looked in my eyes and I said, I love you, it was almost like I was telling her, I love you. And she is the one that just cried, because it was like, you left me.
Right.
And even to this day, I can feel it in my body, because it was like years and years and years of neglect. And then once I said the words, I love you, and then I felt it in my body, I had not felt that before. And it was a feeling that I wanted all the time, because it was such a nurturing feeling, and nobody, no physical person on this earth can make me feel that way. I realized.
That's right.
And I have a husband that loves me, and at that time my mom, and I have family.
Right.
But it is like no other.
Different. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it filled me so full of this unfamiliar feeling at that time. So I dug into that.
Right.
And that's when I started tapping into all of this feeling of unworthiness and self-hatred and body, just why. And I really saw why I was the way I was in that neglect.
Well, what you bring up is a really good point. In years of working with people, this is the first thing that has to heal, and it is almost like there are two different people living in us. As an adult, we have us, what we appear to the outer world, but really what we have is our inner child, right?
Yes.
We have this child that had experiences and that had unresolved emotional experiences. I mean, as wonderful as all parents are, we live in a dysfunctional world. Parents do the best they can, but children have different perceptions, and they are not getting the kind of love that their soul seeks. But what we have to come to as adults is that we are now the adult. We are the adult that must reparent the child. Yes. We are the one that must give unconditional love to that child. And so there's nobody else that can do it for us. And as long as we continue to look to the man, the woman, the job, the situation, in order to fill that emptiness, we will always be looking and we will always be empty. And so it's like, that's so great that you said that, because that's really along the board for most people's healing, is when they start to get that, oh, I'm the one
Yes.
that must reparent. They may not even say in those terms, but I am the one that must love this. And the interesting thing, and we were talking about this before, and so I know that you understand this, is that every time we have a triggered event, right? We have something takes place in the world that triggers an emotional response. It triggers a painful emotional response. We think that it's about what's happening in the moment, but it's not happening. What's happening in the moment? That what's happening in the moment is simply like triggered. It says touch.
Yes.
It touched that point. Yeah. And what I've tried to help people understand is a triggered event is a gift. It's a gift, because it's like it sends this, it's a map. It sends you right to that place where you have the opportunity to love that little person. You have you have the opportunity to have to bring love, not more love, not less. More love, not less. We have the opportunity in that triggered event to go there, to feel it, and we must not feel it. We have to feel it. We have to feel it to heal it, right?
And I always say, go to it to go through it.
That's right.
Yes,
Do it
you
to
have
through
to.
it. You do.
And you know what? I developed such a deep desire for that it was like any trigger, I was like, okay, I would dive in, because I was healing through that so fast. And then it was almost like my life was highlighted in all the areas that were dysfunctional, but because of how I was responding and reacting, how I was allowing those things to affect me. And even though the people didn't change around me, I changed, so the situation changed, because I no longer fed into that. I came back at it from a whole place instead of that broken place that was triggered. It was really beautiful to learn that. And that's why I'm so happy to meet you, because I was not able to find people here that could really teach you how to do that. And that is life-changing.
It is, isn't
life-changing. I mean, people can go from living a life of despair and just pure pain to feeling joy and peace and having this abundant, happy life just with that knowledge alone.
Right.
Because when you know that, everything falls into place, because you start caring about how you feel.
Right.
We don't care about how we feel. And then
Right.
we wonder why we're sick and we're dying of cancer and all these different illnesses.
Right.
But it's our body's way of telling us, I can't take this anymore, but we ignore it because we don't know.
Right.
And
I
that's why I'm
know.
so happy that you're doing this show and your classes and the center. Like, we need people to know these things. This is
Right.
life-changing stuff here.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that there are local resources, like you were saying. Yes, there's tons of resources online, tons of resources on YouTube and that kind of thing.
And in our community.
Yes.
So many. I never
so
knew.
many
Yeah.
that we didn't know that were really
Right.
there and that have skills and that have the ability, and there's just really no excuse anymore, is there? Like, if we're suffering, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
And life doesn't have to be suffering. So our suffering is basically a result of a memory most of
Yes.
the time, and repressed emotions and that kind of thing. And when we can kind of move through that, that helps us to have the inner resources and able to function in our lives, in our families, and in the world. And there's enough stress. This isn't about a panacea for all things, that you're going to learn this and you're going to have no problems anymore. We live
Right.
on the earth,
Right.
and we live in really troubled times in a lot of ways. And it's families and business and money and stress and that kind of thing. But how much better it will be to learn basic skills
Yes.
that can help one be able to manage life in a way that it can bring so much more happiness and so much joy. And it's like, just learn some new skills. Like, if you
Right.
want to be a mathematician, you need to learn math.
Right.
And that's going to help you be able to use math. If you learn about wine, for example, you're going to actually enjoy your wine better because you have some skill.
Yes.
So if you learn something about an area, then you're going to have better access to use it,
Yes.
right? And so that's this. If we learn skills to be able to use our mind in a more productive way, if we learn skills to be able to manage emotions and be able to choose new emotions, to learn how to process old emotions, to become self-aware, and to have skills in order to be able to be of greater service to the world, do the thing that we came here to do, and make a difference in life.
Nothing's wrong with you.
And to know nothing's wrong
That
with
was
you.
the biggest
Right.
thing. Number one, I felt extremely alone. I thought I was the only one. And number two, I learned nothing is wrong with me. Everybody, my whole entire life would say, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're too this and you're too that. And so I learned that I am very sensitive and I am very emotional, and I am thankful, because those emotions make my life richer.
Right.
And I want to feel. And so it's like, I used to be so in my head. That's why I couldn't turn it off when you were talking about your class. So many people I know, they say I can't turn and that's how I was. I could not sit for 5 minutes. But I taught myself how to do it. I retrained my mind.
Right.
But what happened was, I realized that I was living from the neck up. That is what drove my life. I did not have any feeling from the neck down, and that's why I got so sick. So as soon as I started making all of my choices and living my life from my heart and how I feel, my choices were very simple, because the answer really to everything that you need to know is within you.
Right.
And it's when you're connected that you find it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you can do it.
And and it's simple.
Right.
It really is so simple.
Yes.
We spend so much money looking out for outward things to make us happy, like you were saying earlier. And it's really when you learn how to quiet your mind, how to sit in stillness, how to love who you are, eat foods that nourishes your body instead of, putting dead foods in our body and expecting ourselves to thrive, learning these very simple things. And it's just profound, the healing that takes place,
Yeah, that's great.
The transformation.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I love talking to you. I want to
Thank
get
you.
to some more in a minute, but we're going to take a quick break. And in the meantime, as we take that break, it's a good time to just really take a few deep breaths and relax and say, hey, I'm just here in this moment. This moment is perfect as it is, and we'll be right back.
I'm in love with your show.
So we're back, and it's been such a wonderful time to talk to Angel and talk about these ideas of self-love, of peace, of being able to deal with triggered emotions as they arise. And I want to share a little piece of information that might be helpful. And we'll go ahead and bring you in on this too, is it's something that I think is interesting. I like to talk about science because I kind of like to take all this self-help, spirituality, personal growth out of the land of woo-woo and bring it into this is what's happening, really happening. Yeah. And so, in the body and in the brain, there's something that is really happening, and that when we have a triggered event, right? And so there's when we have a situation, all of our senses bring it through the amygdala. So the amygdala is that part that hijacks our life. The amygdala is that part of the brain that creates that fight or flight response. The amygdala is what produces this emotion. The amygdala, some people, it's said, there's a little thing that says, do you have a happy amygdala or do you have a sad amygdala? A happy amygdala, sad amygdala. And some people are naturally happy. Some people have a happy amygdala, like they're not triggered easily. They have a sense of happiness. They're optimistic. You could say that they see that the glass is half full. And they have a wiring. They have a programming. They have a wiring. They have a happy amygdala. It doesn't get triggered in the way other people do. Most human beings have what we could call a sad amygdala or, a fearful amygdala. And that means that it's triggered easily into the fight or flight. And all that depends really on the programming or the genetics of the brain, of that lineage, And so, but all this is happening automatically. You cannot say, don't do this, okay? You cannot just, have you ever done that? Like, don't get triggered.
Right. It's just going to happen.
It's going to happen. This is and this is my point, is this is an automated response that's happening in the brain. And it's, different for you and it's different for me. It's not your fault. It's default. Okay, so this thing is taking place. Now, the interest, there's a couple things that are important about this. One is that in order for information to get through to the part of your brain, the frontal cortex, that is the part of you that actually can make a wise decision, that can, look at two sides of something and that can make a wise decision based upon a lot of different factors. The part of your brain that does that just cannot get information when the amygdalas run awry. Oh, wow. So when we have a triggered event, the amygdalas put all this, hormones in the body. The information isn't getting to the other part of the brain that makes wise decisions. So can you see how important it is then that when we're having a triggered experience that we learn skills to bring the body back into balance before we, interact much with our coworkers or with our relationships,
or send that text.
Exactly, or send that text or send that email.
Oh, gosh.
Number one, we should put notes all over offices everywhere that says, when your amygdala is running, do not email, do not send that text. And that's the difference between people that cause havoc in the workplace or in their homes and families and the ones that have emotional intelligence, the ones that have self-awareness and don't cause havoc. And when we start to understand that this isn't just somebody, more emotional, you have a program that's running. Yeah. And when we understand that there is a program operating and our amygdalas are running awry, and we know that until I calm myself back down, I'm not getting all the information to the part of my brain that makes wise decisions, so I need to take care of that. Mm-hmm. So, that's really important.
Huge.
We cannot be, like say, change your thinking, change your life, positive thinking. You're not going to be positive thinking, changing your life, and being productive when your amygdala is running a trip.
That makes sense.
You're not.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's important. I think that's good.
Huge.
Don't you? Like,
that's
it's important
huge.
knowledge
Yes.
to know that, so that when we're running this trip, when we're triggered, we're having this experience, let's deal with it. And these are skills that I would teach in a class, or skills that we can learn.
Yes.
That says, like one thing, the biggest one is pause. don't text, don't email, you know.
Don't speak.
Don't speak. I mean, just oxygenate. I can never say that word.
I know
breathe.
what you mean. Yeah, breathe.
Just breathe. Take a few deep breaths. You can lay your palms open. When we lay our palms open, we automatically start to relax. Normally, you know, if we don't, when we're stressed out, we close our palms. But just relaxing and opening our palms.
Is that kind of the like sign for allowing? You're just
Exactly.
Kind of
You're like,
opening
I'm
up.
open, I can trust. There's a lot of things that this means. It's a physical activity that triggers a lot of things that say, give messages to the body that says, I'm safe, everything's fine. We take a few deep breaths.
I like
and
that.
immediately we start to relax. And then there's time to get information. You know, there's time, then there's a lot of different steps depending upon the situation, getting information, having awareness, you know, and maybe there's some self-work to do, and maybe then there's some a way to talk to somebody to get some personal assistance or help, depending on if it's just a little trigger or if it's a big trigger. But I think, you know, just that one little piece to start to understand that this is the brain at work. This is our biology at work. This is what's happening. And we don't need to be superstitious about it. We don't need to think I'm better than you, you're better than me, they're over emotional, they're this. We're all different. We're all operating differently. We're seeing things, you know, completely differently.
Yes.
And it has to do with our biology.
Yes.
And so it's nothing to blame. You know, can you see if someone said you're so emotional, you'd go, hey, don't blame me, look at my amygdala.
And you know what? That's so empowering to know that, because then it's like, you know, people say that, oh, you know, like something's wrong with you, and then we personalize it, right?
Right.
Another thing I learned was our temperament. I never knew that we each have our own temperament, and that really plays into all of this as well.
That's right.
Yeah, and we can't change that.
Right.
So that's like what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all related.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing stuff.
Well, it is amazing, and I personally think that it's all about awareness. It's not about it's not even about changing. It's about seeing.
Yeah.
Like, let's go ahead. Just to be able to see that I'm running this body really is triggered. It's running a reaction. It's doing this. The question becomes, who is seeing that? Okay, so who's witnessing that? Who's inside of me, that's witnessing me having an emotional reaction, doing all that? Okay, so there must be two of me. Okay, so there must be two of me.
Yes.
So the part of me that is observing this trip, is observing this physiological situation that's taking place, the part of me that is observing is the part of me that is perfectly whole. We could call it my soul, we could call it my higher self, we could call it my higher mind, but there's a part of us that's not wounded, that's never been wounded, that's perfectly whole, that's perfectly wise. It's, you know, I even call that part the chooser. That's the part of us that can actually choose differently. So there are two minds, and there's a part that's observing all of this. But what happens in human beings until a certain level of evolution and growth is we're fooled into thinking that this crazy is us.
Yes.
Like this, I'm down here being this crazy nutcase over here, and I think this is who I am, and my whole world is all revolved around who this person is, and this crazy, and I've got to fix this person, I got to do, and it's like, the thing is there's so much of that is just one big joke program, right? And so that opportunity to be able to create space, and that opportunity to be able to see that this crazy is not who I am.
That's huge.
Right.
That is huge right there.
I know.
Yes. I mean,
It is
people, I don't
huge.
think if people even understood that, I think they would even have us start into their healing journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It would be like 1 foot forward, because just
They're
that
5 feet forward.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So,
Seriously.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? All this can be taught. You know, this is what I teach in my classes. This is what I've been teaching for 18 years.
And it can be done.
And it
by
can be done.
anyone,
That's
because
right.
I was a person that fought everybody about everything. I was angry and bitter, and I mean, you name it, I was it, I mean, and the thing is that I always tell people, if I could do it, working full time and 4 kids
Right.
and they're in sports, running around, and if I could do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You just have to want it.
Right.
You have to want to feel better more
Right.
than you enjoy.
Well, listen, we don't have much time, but I want to talk about your center. Because I walked in, I was looking for a space. I'm in Fresno part-time. I'm in Orange County part-time. I have a wonderful center in Orange County called the Oneness Center. And I want to build some teaching opportunities in Fresno because that's my home and that's where I'm from. That's where my granddaughter is and my kids. And so I want to be here more. And so I was looking for a place to help hold my next class on neuromeditation, and I ran into Angel, and that's how I found her. And she has a beautiful center that she has created. It's a training center. It's really lovely. It's got a great big meeting room, and it's got another little meeting room and a kitchen and treatment rooms. So tell me how you started that.
Yes,
and why.
I know. So it was actually through my own personal journey and realizing that I could not find people here. Really, it was very difficult to find people that you could go to that taught about all mind, body, and soul. You'd go here for eating, you'd go here for different things, different people, which is great. But I wanted to be that bridge. I wanted to be the place where people can come to not only find the resources in our community, but for the providers to come and teach. So when people think of Hope Through Empowerment, they think of yoga, meditation, neuro meditation, all the classes that you do, and they think of Zumba, and they think of dancing and fun and everything that promotes the quality of our life, enhances the quality of our life, mind, body, and soul wellness. Naturopath doctors talking about hormones and stress management and how our bodies are affected by the food we eat, all of it. And so I was working full time as a secretary for 20 years. And recently lost my mom to pancreatic cancer, healthy to passed away within a month. And what it solidified for me was that there is such a lack of awareness in the whole natural, getting well, emotional healing, how important that is, because she exercised and ate right, all of that. But the emotional healing component was missing. And so just decided that I do not want to spend one more day where I am not trying to help others know that this exists, that people like you exist. I want to be that beacon of light in the community where people can come and they can find people like you to learn what it is they need to do to be well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's so
exciting.
great. And what I really love about that is I love the fact that you had a vision, and I know what it is to have a vision to create something, and then all that it takes to get that off the ground, finding space and having money and getting everything going. I know it's not a little thing, so I really congratulate you on that. And I know that you're going to be making a difference in the lives of a lot of people, both directly and indirectly, that are able to get the kind of help and that kind of thing that you provide there. So that's pretty wonderful.
And thank you for coming and having your classes there, because I'm really excited for people to learn I know a lot of people know about you, but I never did.
Yeah.
So I just am like crown jewel. I'm so excited that you came to the center.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm so glad to be there. Well, I want to make sure that I leave people with something to do, some sort of little skill that they can use in their life right away, right now. And I just sitting here thinking, I wonder which one that should be, because there are so many. So I think just exactly kind of what we talked about today is the idea of being able to calm ourselves down when any kind of an emotional situation happens. And that could be anything from just like watching the news and getting upset to just relaxing your palms and staying in your breath. So the breath, I always say the breath is the highway into peace. The breath is something that was with us all the time. It is never, there's never a time you're not breathing, right? And so the breathing is something that the body does automatically. We do not have to make the body breathe. It is an automatic reaction. The brain is working, the heart is working, the lungs are working, everything's happening perfectly as it should. But when we stop to turn our attention upon this automatic process that's taking place, when we turn our attention to the breath, what happens is there is an interruption that takes place in the stream of thought. So the stream of thought, people are having, 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of the thoughts that we have are repetitive. They're repetitive thoughts. It's something that the wiring in the brain is happening automatically. We're having the same kind of thoughts over and over. It's the babbling mind. It can't quiet down. It's going. The babbling mind is creating like a radio static all the time. So we have this radio static happening in our mind, and it's causing distortion. And so we can, by just simply stopping and pausing and watching the automatic process of the breath, to just stop and pause and notice the inflow and outflow of the breath. It's like the moment we look and turn our attention onto breathing, that stream of thought which causes static and interference has moments of clarity. So when we look at the breath and follow the breath, that stream, that static quiets, and we're able to then calm the mind instantly. So the mind is calmed by simply looking to the breath. Now, why is that important? Number one, if we're in an amygdala breakthrough, if we're in an emotional thing, instantly by beginning to turn towards the breath, our body's functions are going to quiet down. So our heart rate will slow down. The blood vessels open up when we're in a stress situation, which pumps the heart. When we relax, that kind of tones down. The heartbeat slows down. The blood vessels contract just a little bit. And our body goes into a greater state of health. And then more importantly, now we're able to access the part of our brain in the frontal cortex. We're able to have conscious thought. We're able to choose. We're able to observe. We're able to see. And everything, it's like every part of us is dialed up in our ability to think, in our ability for our body to work, and then even more so in our ability to be creative, to be inspiring, to be inspired, to feel whole, everything. So I believe that everything that we need for our happiness, we're already wired for it. So even though our brain is wired to protect us, our brain is wired, it's protecting us from harm. Our brain is also wired for states of happiness. It's wired for states of peace. Our brain, we have the programming, we have it innately in us, but we have to, it's like we need a key to start to unlock that part of us that can bring greater peace, greater intelligence, creativity, all the things, love that make life worthwhile, right? And so that's in us too. So we're learning skills to be able to take the key and insert the key in the part of us that's going to serve us on a long-term basis to experience that which we all want to experience. There isn't a person on earth, no matter where they live, and I've traveled all over the world, little villages in India, big cities, it doesn't matter. Everybody's the same. Everybody's operating in the same kind of brain system, and everybody's looking for the same thing. Greater peace and harmony inside themselves. Greater ability to experience love within the context of intimate and family relations. And everybody wants to experience a sense that they are provided, that there's enough, that it's safe, and that there's enough for us to be happy and taken care of and well. And no matter where we are, that's what everybody wants to experience. And so my hope and mission in life really is to just help do my little teeny piece of helping to teach people to access their inner skills so that they can begin to have a little bit more of what they want in their life, which is that greater peace, well-being, happiness, and of course relationships and work and satisfaction.
It's so huge.
So,
Wow. I'm excited.
I know, right?
It's exciting to me.
So I'm so happy that you were here. I think it's getting close
you.
for us to end our time together. I'm glad that you've been here. I just want to say you have a website.
I have a website. It's www.hopethroughempowerment.com.
Great.
And that's kind of about me and my story, and then it has information about the sender.
Awesome,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
I'm glad. I'll be there this evening teaching a neuro meditation class. More information about my work, my books, and I've got a whole bunch of CDs too that can downloads, and I'm creating a lot more on meditation so that you can just plug it in and begin to live some of these things. And my website is JanetteFreeman.com, JNETTE. Freeman, I think it's on this screen, but JanetteFreeman.com, and sign up on my email list and you can tell where I'm at or have access, and don't hesitate to shoot me an email or a question or anything that I can do to help and support you on learning the inner skills that will create the outer results in your life that you most want to live and that will most bring you the happiness that you absolutely deserve. Thank you again for tuning in, and have an amazing day.